Yeah. Does she need to wear this? Okay. Yeah, sure.
Being recorded?
How close do you want this to be?
Close.
This close?
Probably.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Remember, this is the all-in podcast.
Sanjay.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Cathryn Chen. I am the founder and CEO of MarketX Ventures. We're a one-stop shop for global pre-IPO investments. We have Sanjay Uppal, the CEO of Finbots.AI with us. On the right side, we have my colleague Wissam. Please welcome Sanjay. Would you like to give us a little intro about yourself?
Thank you, Catherine. Everybody, I'm delighted to be here today. We're pretty much at the end of an amazing 3 days of Singapore FinTech Festival. So my voice is giving way. My legs are probably giving way, but it's been absolutely awesome being here. This is, as Finbots.AI, our 5th year here.
Let's talk about FinTech. I mean, we're at Singapore FinTech Week, the event that attracts global talents to Singapore, which is one of the fastest growing FinTech markets. So maybe we can start with, what do you think are some differences you've noticed from 5 years ago, your first FinTech Week, versus now, the 5th one?
The amazing thing about Singapore FinTech Festival has been it continues to evolve, it continues to enhance. I'm sure the team that organizes does an amazing job in analysis and looking at areas of improvement. We all did come into this year after 2 years of virtual version. So the idea really was, what to expect on the event, what to expect of the visitors who will be coming in here. And I think on behalf of myself and my team, exceeded all our expectations.
That's great to hear. How do you think about, this year's event? What are some takeaways?
It's interesting. I mean, we had a lot of discussions at the event and outside of the event. Singapore is definitely buzzing more than those last years. We've been quite impressed by the scene here, and FinTech especially. Finbots is one of those companies that we quite like. We have a lot of questions for you, Sanjay, but we're quite pleased with the discussions we had, especially with people starting to look into our platform at MarketX.
Yeah, so maybe a little bit about us. We started in 2015, and in the past, we have invested in over 50 private companies. We have also specialized in FinTech investments. So today, let's dive deep in. What made you start Finbots, and what makes you Finbot special?
My background's financial services. Actually, by qualification, I'm an engineer, electrical and electronics engineering, master's in physics. So I'm very, very comfortable with maths and data, as well as technology. Post my MBA, I went into the world of banking, where I spent more than 20 years.
Oh, we have very similar backgrounds. Also, Deutsche, JP Morgan, Rothschild.
Yeah, ANZ, Standard Chartered, Emirates NBD, Hong Leong Bank in Malaysia.
So between us, we cover the streets.
Absolutely. I actually came out of banking 10 years ago, and I started my own consulting firm. I could see that there are legacy challenges in financial services that need a practitioner mindset. Started a consulting firm that focused only on financial services, hired only practitioners, both on domain as well as technology side. We did it end to end. We had a business that just went strength to strength. We were pitching and winning big contracts against some of the biggest names in the industry, traditional names. Then came 2020. With the coming of COVID, that business actually suffered. We needed to be on the ground, our clients needed to be on the ground, and that wasn't happening.
Exactly.
In the meanwhile, in 2018, I had launched Finbots.AI. And the reason I'd done that is benefit of having done my banking career plus consulting to multiple banks. I realized there are traditional problems today, even today, that exist in financial institutions that are no different from the way they existed 25, 30 years ago.
Exactly. I mean, on that note, right, I'm curious because when we first started our business, 2015, right, that was the beginning, right? We were in US, we were in China, but Southeast Asia is a vibrant place, right? When we first invested in Gojek, for example, at the time, Indonesia has a 3% credit card penetration rate, right? So tell us more about Southeast Asia FinTech. What makes Finbot right time, right place to launch this product?
Credit decisioning is something that's been a challenge across the markets, and not just in Southeast Asia, globally. It's resulted in the fact that there are probably prices that are reflective of higher risk rates that lenders undertake, but there is an enormous scale of financial exclusion as a result. IFC actually published a report last year, just looking at micro, small, medium enterprise lending space across developing markets from Latin America to Asia Pacific. The size of the unserved market is 2.5 times the actual market.
Wow, that is insane.
So you're talking about $3.7 trillion lending into the market, and the unserved market is $8.1 trillion.
Wow.
Out of that, a substantial part is actually this side of the world, Asia Pacific. Right. Southeast Asia features prominently for two reasons. One, we are in Singapore, which is an amazing place to be in terms of the supportive ecosystem, and just the constant kind of knowledge flow that you see here. But number two, we're also surrounded by markets that are ripe for this right now. Just as you mentioned, Indonesia, right? But you've got Philippines, you've got Cambodia, Malaysia, Thailand. You've got South Asia just as an extension, right? So I think we quite like the environment. We quite think the opportunities we have across all these countries are just amazing. And it gives us the opportunity to test out our products, right? And that's been a great part of our evolution.
Got it. So maybe we can talk about what exactly makes this opportunity right now make sense, right? So for example, in the US, we're seeing a lot of B2B play, right? For the longest time, people ask me, hey, Cathryn, as a venture capitalist, what do you see as the biggest difference between Silicon Valley and somewhere like Singapore? And one of the things I mentioned was, we don't know when B2B is going to take off. But in the last few years, we've seen, right, a lot of B2B enterprise SaaS business have taken off. So when it comes to AI modeling, which is what Finbots is focused on, where did the inspiration come from? And also, I was very wowed by your demo. Within minutes, you guys can run the credit modeling, which was impossible to do before, or in the past, you had to do it for several months as a consulting, business. So what do you think right now at this moment in time makes it a perfect time to focus on this product?
I think one of the things we have to see is coming out of a history of nearly a decade of a benign credit environment, growing liquidity, low interest rates. And with that change right now, I think there's an enormous disruption in markets across different chains of credit. So whether it's individual borrowers or even business borrowers, which really means organizations needs to be very agile on their models and literally be reviewing them constantly and rebuilding them. But at the same time, there is a need for organizations across the chain, not just the big players, but everybody to have that credit modeling capability.
So you're saying that you're democratizing access to this modeling capability used to be just in the hands of the few.
Oh, absolutely. So I think if you look at credit modeling the way it exists in terms of what we think are best in class today, that market is less than 5% of global lenders. 95% are essentially working with rudimentary models, or you work with smaller organizations, the expert models, which let's say the CEO and the CRO sit down, write 4 rules and say, this is who we lend to and this is not who we lend to. I think what our product enables is, and we've got live cases of that, are lenders at literally the most unsophisticated end are able to use our product to do some amazing work in their credit decisioning and portfolio management.
Got it. So, at this moment, we have to ask you a hard question.
You ready for this?
We all know the last few months in terms of capital markets, things have not been great for many founders, especially in this current fundraising environment. What do you see as some changes? And, maybe positive, right? Like, what are the things that kind of have impacted? Because from a VC point of view, as an investment platform, we've seen a lot of founders suffering as much as 50% decline in valuation. Some of the best companies that are doing hundreds of millions of revenue, all of a sudden you see this multiple shrink from tens to like single digits, right? How do you think that has impacted the entire ecosystem? As a founder, do you see that as a good thing, a bad thing? Maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Before I became a fintech founder, a large part of my career was spent in CFO roles. So, valuing companies, valuations, etc., has been very close to my heart. And I think what the market is demanding today is getting some level of reasonableness back. The market is beginning to look at the right metrics in terms of valuations. Their expectations are getting a bit right-sized in terms of paths to profitability. So I actually think this is a great step. As in any cycle, you always have these kind of slips and then upward back journey after regroup. And I think that's where we're sitting right now. So what you're seeing in the market, I think, is just the right movement you need to have, but it's creating some amazingly positive behavior in terms of how companies are looking at their own businesses, their metric, looking at how best invest it. And I think that's a great outcome even for the investors who are backing these companies. I think there's a pain period that you have, and that will kind of continue, probably for another 12, 18 months, perhaps, because it's also in a time where you're seeing interest rate cycle that's kind of uptaking and the inflationary pressures. So, but combined with that, I think the organizations and the tech companies and the startups that come through it will come out way more solid than you've seen before.
That's amazing. Great to hear. Even from our perspective, we spent the last few months traveling around the world, from Bogota, Colombia to, I was just in Saudi last week at Riyadh at the Future Investment Summit. What we noticed is that really there has been a huge change in the entire sentiment, right? However, the fervent enthusiasm for tech hasn't changed, right? So maybe like we can talk a little bit about how do you think more of a regional divide, right? What are the trends that you guys are noticing when it comes to maybe, you know, investments in this part of the world, investment in India, investments in Saudi, investments in Silicon Valley, right? Like from that point of view, what do you see as some changes happening?
I feel there is a change that's happening, and that's something you mentioned with your fundraising experiences. There is a shift of power moving from founders to investors. And you mentioned you raised earlier this year. How was that experience with you? Is that something we start to see? And as investors, we're happy with that change?
For us, my key principle when I look at a business is to focus on value, not the valuation. Valuation is a reflection of a demand and supply element, perception element. And I think for any business today, whether it was a year ago or today, as long as you're focusing on value and you're looking at value creation, the valuations could move up and down based on, you know, where the markets are, etc. But the underlying value doesn't change. So that's why I think we raised funding at that point in time, but we are seeing some enormous interest, you know, in recent weeks and months. And on the back of the fact that the markets are seeing the kind of credit stress that's unprecedented in the last 10 years, but there is an increased need for a product like ours that allows you to have much better models and much faster.
Great. Again, thank you so much, Sanjay, for joining us today. You know, we're at Singapore FinTech Week, and as always, we'd love to see you guys next week at our MarketX interview of the week. And just as a shout out, we're having events next time in Dubai, and please join us next time you're around. We're in Silicon Valley, Dubai, Singapore, and also next time we'd love to invite you to our events in London. So very nice having you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Cathryn. Thank you, Wasim. Pleasure meeting you. Thank you. Oh, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Was that useful?
How was that?
That was good.
Good, good.